They say dogs have short memories. We forget where we left our chew toys, or why we decided to chase the neighbor's cat up the wrong tree. But if you think we forget the important things, you're wrong. Dead wrong. Let me tell you about those walks I used to have in the forest with my best friend. We're talking years ago, back when my face was a little less wrinkled, and I still had the enthusiasm to chase after squirrels without pulling something in my leg. My best friend was Max, a mutt with 1,000 breeds mixed in. Some might say he had a unique look, but come on, let's face it. He looked like someone had taken all the rejected dog parts, mashed them together and called it a dog. We both knew he wasn't winning any beauty contests, but he was still the most loyal friend I ever had. Back then, our human liked to take us for these long hikes in the forest. I always thought the forest was one big green buffet. So many smells, plants, and occasionally animal surprises I could roll in. Max, on the other hand, he loved to run. His little legs, don't ask me how he managed to run with those stumpy things, could carry him through trees, over logs, and through muddy puddles. I swear he could outrun half the critters we stumbled upon, which is saying something considering he looked like a lumpy potato on stilts. Those were the days. The forest seemed like an endless adventure, filled with twists, turns, and smells that could make a hound dog jealous. Max and I would chase birds, sniff out tracks, and sometimes, if we were really lucky, we'd find a bone someone forgot. Oh, the thrill. I remember how we'd dig up little treasures like pieces of wood that tasted like heaven, or a random leaf that was somehow better than the last 10 we'd sniffed. And we'd compete. Oh, would we compete? It was like a silent understanding. Whoever found the smelliest thing was the winner. One time I found a dead fish near the stream. Now, I don't mean a fresh fish either. I'm talking about one of those that probably saw the last ice age. It smelled worse than Max after rolling in the mud for 3 hours, but I carried it in my mouth with pride, and Max just stared at me, probably thinking, "How did you get so lucky, Frank?" That was my moment of glory. We'd spend hours out there, and when we finally made it back to the car, we'd be covered in dirt, leaves, and the occasional tick. Our human would look at us with that resigned face that only dog owners know, shake their head, and laugh. That was happiness. Pure, messy happiness. I don't remember when it started, but one day, Max just couldn't keep up the way he used to. He'd still run ahead, barking his head off like he was king of the world, but after a few minutes, he'd start to lag behind. I remember thinking, "Come on, Max, what's up? You're not getting soft on me, are you?" But there was something different in his eyes. He was tired, a kind of tired I hadn't seen before. Our human noticed it too. After that, we started taking shorter walks. Instead of racing up hills and diving into bushes, we'd just walk at Max's pace. I didn't mind at first. I'd still get to sniff around, dig a little here and there, but there was something missing. It was like our wild days were slowly slipping away, and no matter how many times I nudged Max or barked at him to speed up, he just looked at me with that gentle, tired look. I could almost hear him say, "I'm trying, Frank. I really am." After a while, it became clear that Max couldn't come to the forest anymore. He'd stay at home, and I'd go out with our human. At first, I thought maybe he'd join us later, like he was just taking a break or something. But he didn't. I remember the first time I went back to our favorite spot alone. I looked around, sniffing every inch of the path we used to run through, hoping to find some trace of him. But all I found was the silence. I can't describe how strange it felt. The forest seemed bigger, emptier, without him running beside me, tripping over roots, or barking at birds like they'd actually care. I tried to fill the silence, barking at random squirrels, rolling in anything I could find, even dragging sticks back to our human. But it wasn't the same. Nothing was the same. One day we didn't even go to the forest. Our human took me and Max to a place that smelled strange, like a mix of fear and sadness. I remember feeling my tail tucked between my legs. It was instinct. Max was lying down on a soft bed, his eyes barely open. He looked at me, and for a second I saw the old Max, the one who'd bark and run and sniff out all the best smells. But he was tired, more tired than I'd ever seen him. I nudged him with my nose and he gave me one of those looks, the kind only a best friend can give. It was like he was saying, "It's okay, Frank. I'm ready." And then he closed his eyes, and I knew. Max was gone. I don't know how long I stayed there, just lying beside him, feeling his warmth fade. Our human was crying, and I wanted to tell them it was okay, that we'd had the best days any dogs could ask for. But I couldn't. I just lay there, silent, wishing for one more walk in the forest. After that, I didn't feel much like going to the forest. The first few times I refused to leave the car, stubbornly keeping my paws firmly on the seat. Our human would coax me, pet me, and eventually I'd give in. But I couldn't bring myself to enjoy it the way I used to. Every bush, every scent, every echo of a bird call reminded me of Max. The forest was like a hollow version of itself. No matter how deep I wandered in, it felt like I was chasing ghosts. I'd catch myself sniffing the ground, hoping absurdly that Max's scent was still there, hidden among the pine needles and the wet earth. But of course it wasn't. He was gone. And no matter how many trees I marked or how much I rolled in the dirt, I couldn't shake the emptiness. Sometimes I'd bark, just once, waiting for him to come bounding up, tongue lolling, looking at me with that goofy, lopsided grin. But only silence answered. That silence was my new companion. As the days passed, the forest walks became less of an adventure and more of a quiet ritual. I'd walk along the same paths, the memories of Max and me playing like a movie reel in my head. There was this one time I remembered when he tried to chase a deer. Don't ask me why, as if he stood a chance. But he went after it with such gusto, his legs pumping and his bark full of bravado. Naturally, the deer leapt away, leaving Max barking at the empty air, looking around like he'd just lost his keys. And then, there was the mud incident. Max found a particularly soggy patch by the stream and went in up to his belly. He looked like he was in heaven. But then he tried to get out and discovered he was stuck. I'm not ashamed to say I laughed. A deep, full-bellied bark that probably echoed across half the forest. Eventually, our human had to pull him out, their clothes splattered with mud, while Max just wagged his tail like he'd won a prize. Those memories, they brought a kind of bittersweet warmth, like the sun filtering through the trees. I could almost feel Max beside me, his panting breath and his silly grin. But when I'd turn around, he wasn't there, just the empty forest and my shadow. A few months later, our human started bringing another dog on our walks. Her name was Lucy, a sprightly little beagle with big, curious eyes. At first I didn't like it. It felt wrong, like bringing someone into a secret club where only Max and I belonged. Lucy would dart ahead, sniffing everything, yapping at birds, and looking back at me as if to say, "Come on, aren't you excited?" But I wasn't. Eventually, Lucy figured out that I wasn't the playful type. She'd approach me cautiously, sniffing around and sometimes lying down beside me, quiet and patient. Over time, I let her. She'd never be Max, but she was gentle and kind, and after a while, her presence was comforting, like a warm blanket on a chilly night. One day, we came to the old stream where Max and I had found that legendary mud pit. Lucy hesitated, sniffing the air as if she knew something was special about that spot. She looked at me, her tail wagging slowly, inviting me to join her. For the first time in months, I waded into the mud. Lucy followed, and together we splashed around her, barking with joy, and me, well, I couldn't help but feel a little spark of happiness. As the seasons changed, I found myself feeling lighter, like the weight of Max's absence was finally lifting. I'd walk through the forest with Lucy, and instead of dwelling on the memories, I started making new ones. It wasn't the same as before, but it was different in a good way. I'd still think of Max, of course. Some days I'd catch a familiar scent or hear a rustle in the trees, and it was like he was right there beside me, just for a moment. I'd smile to myself, a quiet, knowing kind of smile. Lucy would wag her tail and give me that curious beagle look, and I'd feel grateful for the memories, for the friendship, and for the new chapter I was living. Our human seemed happier too, watching Lucy and me explore, seeing the joy that had come back into our lives. We were a team, the three of us, navigating the world and cherishing the past without letting it weigh us down. I still visit Max's favorite spots in the forest, usually with Lucy by my side. I sit for a while, breathing in the familiar scents and feeling the quiet peace of the woods. Sometimes I wonder if Max is watching us from somewhere, his tail wagging. Still that goofy, lovable mutt who could always make me laugh. If you've ever lost a friend, you'll know the pain doesn't go away. It changes shape, softening over time, becoming part of who you are. Max's memory lives in every bark, every wag, and every moment I spend in the forest. It's like he's left a part of himself there, something invisible but ever-present, a legacy of muddy paws and happy days. So, if you're out there, running through the forest, barking at the wind, know that a part of me will always be with Max, chasing those old dreams and laughing at the memories. Goodbye, Max, and thank you for being my friend.